If you play Valorant competitively, if you like to grind a lot of rank, then optimizing your settings for the best advantage is something you want to be doing early on in your Valorant career. Today, I'll be quickly going through the best settings in Valorant to give a competitive advantage that I personally use alongside the vast majority of pro players. I'll not waste your time explaining the ins and out of every single setting. There are plenty of videos on YouTube already that get into the nitty-gritty. If you are interested in those, you can go check them out, of course. But for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to give you what I know works. Starting off with your general settings, for enemy highlight color, this is preference. Whichever color helps you to see enemies best is what you want to be using. I swap off the default red to yellow as that's what helps me to see enemies best, but you might see some players using another color like purple. If you're good with red and have no problem distinguishing enemies, then by all means use red. When it comes to mouse sensitivity, there is no best sensitivity, just what works for you. That being said, there are certain parameters you want to stick in to ensure your sensitivity isn't too fast or too slow to where it is actually a detriment to your gameplay and long-term progress. Generally speaking, you're gonna want to keep your EDPI anywhere between 200 and 400. That's where the vast majority of pro players keep theirs at, and you're gonna want to keep yours in that range. What is EDPI, you ask? Simply put, your EDPI is your in-game sensitivity multiplied by your mouse DPI, creating your effective DPI or EDPI. For example, I keep my mouse DPI at 800 and use an in-game sensitivity of 0.42. That would make my EDPI 336, which you can see falls into the 200 to 400 range, usually a little bit on the higher side. You'll see many players usually like to keep theirs below 300, especially a lot of low sense gamers. When it comes to your map settings, you just want to ensure max visibility and little confusion. Between rotate and fix, that is preference, but I like to keep mine on rotate. Keep players centered, you'll definitely want to turn off. That way the entire map will be visible at all times. With this setting on, you're gonna see that a lot of time, the far edges of your map won't be visible depending on where you are currently standing. So definitely keep this off. For size and zoom, I like to keep mine at 1.1 for size and 0.9 for zoom. This gives my minimap a good size and maximum visibility. You may like yours a bit smaller or larger. Minimap vision cones you're gonna want to keep on. This way it's pretty easy to keep track of what angles your teammates are holding by quickly glancing at your minimap. Show map region names I like to keep on always. This is especially helpful if you are a newer player and don't yet know all the map callouts. Then this will help you to learn those. If not, this is up to your preference. When it comes to privacy settings, there's really no need for you to keep these on unless you're a streamer. Otherwise, you can just keep these off. But I do like to have my name hidden from players outside my party, so instead of my teammates seeing 9killer, they're gonna see Sova or Jet or whatever character I'm playing. I just prefer it that way, but you can keep it how you please. Looking at your other general settings, first person handedness, if you're right-handed, keep it on right. If you're left-handed, keep it on left. It just swaps the in-game view model to align with that choice. Always show inventory I like to keep on, that way I can always know what weapon I currently have equipped as my primary and secondary as seen in the bottom right corner of your screen. Most of the time you will know what weapons you have on you if you bought them, but on eco rounds where you might pick a gun up off the ground but you don't want to swap to it immediately for whatever reason, having this on allows me to quickly glance at the bottom right of my screen to know for sure if I picked up a phantom or a vandal or whatever else. When it comes to showing mature content, corpses and blood, I prefer to keep those on, but some do say it's beneficial to keep corpses off, especially if you play a character like Sage. With corpses off, you'll see just a token hovering with the player icon. This can be helpful to quickly identify a teammate to make sure you resurrect the right person with Sage. But you'll never catch me playing Sage, and I have no issue identifying the bodies on the ground, so I keep this setting off. But if you find it beneficial to keep it on, you can do so. When it comes to network buffering, you're gonna want to keep this on minimum if you have a stable internet connection. But if you regularly are experiencing very high ping or packet loss for some reason, then putting this on medium or maximum can help your game to run a bit smoother at the cost of sub-second delays to movement and input. So you definitely don't want to have this setting on. Ideally, you want to have a stable connection, but if it's really bad and you still want to play the game, then of course moving this up to medium or maximum can help smooth things out for your game inputs. Now, moving over into keybinds, I'm gonna keep this short because I already have a dedicated video to keybinds on my channel that covers them in pretty good detail. I'll have that linked in the top right corner if you want to check it out. But what I will say here is that yes, keybinds are mostly subjective. What works best for you works best for you. But there are a couple of things I would strongly recommend you consider changing. The main thing I recommend is setting up your keybinds in such a way that your fingers rarely have to move off your movement keys. That's why, as you can see here, I've moved some of my abilities to my mouse, allowing my fingers to focus more on movement. There are a lot of times you're gonna want to be equipping abilities while continuously moving, and this setup best allows me to do that. Another one I highly recommend is moving your jump bind to either mouse wheel up or down. Either works. This will make your b-hopping and movement in general much more consistent, and it's harder to accidentally jump in the middle of a gunfight as compared to leaving it on the spacebar, which definitely allows those mistakes to happen more often. But as you see here, I actually have it double bound to space and mouse wheel down. And this is for one reason and one reason only, and that's Jet. With Jet, she of course has her passive ability to hover, and if I only had jump bound to my mouse wheel, then I wouldn't be able to hover at all. So I really only ever touch the spacebar when I'm playing her. Otherwise, I'm using scroll wheel whenever I'm hopping around or doing anything like that on another character. Also, please just use the number keys to swap weapons. Don't use your scroll wheel for that. It's too inconsistent and you're gonna end up accidentally swapping to the wrong weapon a lot if you do that. So please don't. Those are the main things, and like I said, I go into more detail on that dedicated keybinds video on my channel. Be sure to check it out. Moving on to Crosshair. This is also mostly preference, but there are a few things I would recommend. Most players either use a cross or a dot. I prefer to use a cross with a gap in the middle, as I find it easier to do lineups when I'm playing Sova or any other characters where lineups are necessary. For the specific length and size, you can use whatever you like as long as it's not too egregiously big and is taking up too much space on your screen where it actually is a hindrance. You're gonna want to be adjusting your inner line values and turning off outer lines entirely. I keep my primary values, as you can see here, at 2, 1, and 3. If there's a specific pro you like to watch, you can look up their crosshair and use it. That's perfectly fine. See here, my primary crosshair is named Derek after the pro player formerly of 100 Thieves. Whichever way you get your crosshair, I strongly suggest taking off firing error and movement error. These essentially just expand your crosshair whenever you shoot and move. And I don't know about you, but I find this extremely distracting and annoying, and I prefer to have a consistent static crosshair. So I recommend you take those off. I also recommend changing your crosshair color to something vibrant like a green, for example, so that it doesn't blend into the background of maps like how the default white will sometimes. This will make sure you always know exactly what you're aiming at. Now let's move over to the general tab of your video settings. Display mode you'll want on full screen. Resolution you'll want on the native resolution of your monitor. Unless you're really struggling to get consistent FPS, then you can lower your resolution. For monitor, just select the primary monitor that you're going to be playing Valorant on. If you only have one monitor, this will be selected by default. Aspect ratio method does not matter when playing at your native resolution, so don't worry about that. And when it comes to limiting your FPS, the only one that really matters is limit FPS always and max FPS always. I keep the limit FPS always turned on and set my max FPS to 300. This is because I have a 240Hz monitor and my game regularly plays at around 300 FPS. Now, you might ask, why have your FPS to 300 if your monitor is only 240? It won't even matter, right? Well, it actually does. Regardless of what's the refresh rate of your monitor, it's still beneficial to run your game at a higher FPS than your refresh rate, as the higher your FPS is, the less input lag you will receive. So even if you only have a 60Hz monitor, for example, it would still be beneficial to run your game at over 100 FPS if possible, so as to have as minimal input lag as possible. Also, important here for all my NVIDIA GPU users, you definitely want to be turning on NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency to on plus boost. This is just an additional tool to reduce latency if you are an owner of an NVIDIA GPU, so you definitely want to turn it on. Looking at your graphics settings, this is pretty easy. You're gonna want to be turning everything off or to its lowest value for the most part. This allows for the best visual clarity with minimal distractions and allows your computer to output the highest FPS possible, which, as we've already learned, is definitely what you should be aiming for. Only thing you need turned on here is multi-threaded rendering. This just allows Valorant to utilize the full power of all your CPU cores for the best performance. And I'm sure everyone watching this at least has a quad-core CPU, so definitely keep this turned on. You'll see a lot of players have anti-aliasing completely turned off. That's fine. This basically just removes jagged edges from objects. With it completely off, you'll see those jagged edges, which may or may not bother some of you. It does bother me slightly, so I have it on the lowest setting, which is FXAA, which removes those jagged edges with no visible loss in performance. I also like to keep my anisotropic filtering on 2x just so that my skins look slightly better and not a blurry mess. And if you're a fan of skins like me, then you're going to love the sponsor of today's video, which is SkinClub.
Fed up with dull Steam cases? Why not try SkinClub missions and get awesome skins? Have more fun completing interactive tasks, opening free cases, and getting rewards. Diversify your pastime and boost your inventory with updated missions. Log into your Steam account, try out our new missions, and get skins on SkinClub. Drive, love, Counter-Strike.
When it comes to sound, there's only really one important setting that you must change for a competitive advantage, and that is turning Enable HRTF to on. HRTF is essentially a system that allows for more accurate 3D spatialization of sounds. All this means is that you will be more accurately able to hear if enemies are behind you, in front of you, or to your left or to your right, and allows you to also better judge how far away they are. So you definitely need to have this turned on. And just like that, we covered all the essential Valorant settings in a quick video to give you the best advantage in game. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like to show your support and subscribe if you want to see more competitive Valorant content in the future. Best of luck out there, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.